Okay, everyone, how you doing tonight? Welcome to the North Carolina Cryptid and Paranormal Project. My name is Tom Cardos. I'm your host, and tonight we're going to have Robyn Haynes Mccray on, and I'm going to bring her in a minute. So, how's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Laura. Hello, Rin. Okay, let's get started. Hello, Robyn.
Hi, how are you?
How you doing tonight?
Okay, let's get started. I'm good.
You got to turn your volume down on your phone.
Hello, Robyn. Hang on a minute. Hi, how are you? How's that?
That's great. Don't worry, because I do the same thing all the time when I'm using my phone to I'll use my phone to do comments on because it's easier, and I could do the emojis on my phone. I can't do them on the laptop, so I'll use my phone to like comment back to the chat. So I always forget to turn my volume down. So yeah, no
mine
worries.
was reversed. My phone was okay, but I forgot to turn the laptop or the
I gotcha.
thing off of the tablet.
So to those that don't really know who you are, because my channel is fairly new and maybe not everyone that's on my channel knows who you are. If you want to do like a quick bio on how everything came to be, how you got started, what brought you to do what you're doing now. So if you want to just do like a quick run through bio.
Yeah, I'm not sure a lot of people know me anyway. Here's the thing. I started out very young where even when I was, 4 years old, the Bigfoots would come out of the woods. They'd be around the tree line. And I would literally be outside playing and I would see them. They would verbally talk to me. They would mind speak with me. I would see all these things. And I didn't realize other people didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So my thoughts were a little bit skewed opposed to other people's because I did not know that this was not normal.
Oh, wow.
I had my first ET abduction at age 4. I had already seen the Bigfoots and the Dogmen prior to that. My mom would tell me about, as I got older, my mom said, you used to talk about your imaginary friends, even when you were 3 years old, and they were really tall, taller than your dad and covered with hair.
Wow. So what's your blood type? I was just curious what your blood type is.
A lot of people ask me that. I'm O positive.
So you're O, but you're not negative. You're O positive. Okay.
Yeah, I'm positive.
But you are the O blood. You are O blood because that's a rare blood type. It's not.
Yeah, the ETs seem to really like it. I will say that. Cool. They seem to,
Because everybody that I know that's RH, either you're O or O negative or O positive, they have some kind of abilities or they have special power. Like I wouldn't say power, but I would say psychic abilities. They're intuitive, or they can communicate with things or species that we can't. So.
Yeah, and my mom always spoke to ghosts. She could always do that, but she never had any other abilities. She never experienced any of the cryptids or the ETs or anything like that.
Wow.
I was the freak of nature on that one.
This started at a young age. Yeah, you were young when this all started, and
I never knew it wasn't normal. I really didn't. I was probably over the age of 10 when I figured out that not everybody had all these things going on. When I was very young, I'd ask my mom and dad about it. Like by the time I was 4 and 5, I was actively looking at stick structures and telling my mom and dad about dogmen and Bigfoots and ETs and stick structures, and this meant this or this meant that. And my mom and dad would look at me like, they didn't know what to say. And they never said they didn't believe me. They never said I was crazy or I was making it up or anything, or that you dreamed it. All they ever did was say, we don't know anything about it. We can't help you with it. But they were never, I was very blessed. I was never, made to feel bad about it or anything. It was just there wasn't anything to talk about because they had no information to help me. And so I just got to the point where I just didn't say anything. Not because I couldn't, but because what was there going to be to say? And so as I got older, I was just not, where I wanted to say anything to anybody. My close friends, I would say something, and everybody, that I was close with believed me. And they were fine with that. But it was a long time before I, really got real forward with it. I had, gone through most of my life where people knew that I had premonitions that always happened, and I talked to ghosts. And I had a friend whose children were taken by her ex-husband, and I helped her find her kids, I mean, that kind of thing. But the Foots were always around, and anybody that was close with me always knew that they were going to be around. They just were. That was just part of it. And they would see them. It wasn't that I was the only one that, saw them, I guess is the best way to put it.
Wow. That's amazing. So when you started getting those like intuitive things, did it make you were you like, what am I supposed to do? How did you figure out how to get like good at what you're doing? How to help them out when things came your way? How did that start?
You mean help the Bigfoot out?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that there was a turning point for that. They started having me do healing work on them probably back in 2011 or 12. But prior to that, it was just like a mutual give and take relationship. They were just always there. If they needed something, it was like, okay, no problem. And it started out as little games. Everybody that knows me knows I'm a total animal freak. So like everybody else, there was a time that in the back of my mind, I knew they were human. In the front of my mind, it was like, well, they're covered in hair. They, when I was a kid, they must be an animal, but they had language. They had their language. They had our language. They could mind speak. They could verbally talk. They walked erect. Not that I didn't see them on all fours at times, or, I always call it the Scooby-Doo move, but, they do the belly crawl and they can do it at lightning speed. But I would see all these things that indicated they were a human, but yet they were covered in hair. So as a child, I was like, oh, they're an animal, but then I knew that they weren't. And if they wanted like an apple, we want apples or, whatever. Okay, fine, I'd go get it. And then as I had family members around, not all of them, but a large portion would see them. My kids all grew up around them. My kids, some of my kids remember it. Some of my kids would prefer to forget it. But, they were all there.
Wow. So your kids were involved, yeah.
Not willingly involved. They were. There was a time, once I met Igor Borstuff, and Igor was coming to my house all the time. The kids would come out and they would go out in the woods with us now and then, but it was primarily, myself. But they would, it got to where they wanted the thick curtains. They got tired of looking out their window and seeing faces looking back in. And then around 2010, it had the group that I was around at that point, I had moved again, and they would come up and they'd knock on my windows at night, and I'd go out at 2:00 in the morning and I'd sit out in the woods with them, which was not a problem. It was a really good group. I don't recommend that by any means to anybody. No. I didn't have anybody to go to. You have to remember that up until 2011, I literally did this by myself. I had nobody to go to. There was nobody to ask questions. I contacted one person that owned Michigan Bigfoot because I had an experience where not only had I seen them and they were around the house and very active, one had gone into the house, and I had went out in the woods and I'd actually gone through very quickly, but I'd went through this portal into where they were at. And I was like, this is blowing my mind. So I contacted him, and he was very kind to me. And then I moved. And so it changed it all. So when I saw them again in 2009, I contacted them. But other than that, I didn't have anybody, so I was figuring it out as I went along. And I made a lot of mistakes that I would tell people now not to do. I was lucky the clan that I was working with were so incredibly kind, and I still have contact with them today. And they never tried to hurt me, but I would go out at 2 a.m. and sit with them.
Oh, wow.
That was the normal. And if I fell asleep early and they couldn't get me, they would go and knock on my kids' windows. And then the kids would come get me and they'd be like, will you just go out there? We're trying to sleep. Like, just Mom, go out in the woods,
wow. Can I ask you a question about that clan?
Sure.
What did they kind of look like? Like, I know they're at the attributes, like they're just like people. Everyone looks different, but what was like the resemblance, like the attributes of that clan? Because I know some people say like sometimes they have like the ape-hooded nose, they have the big cone head, they got this huge trapezius where they have no neck. I mean, how were this clan that you used to hang out with?
Well, I want to point out that I get a lot of people that, and I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be. These are just, my own things that I figured out and whatever. But everybody says, like, groups in this area are all, they got the conial heads, or, groups in this. That is not my experience. Okay. The groups that I've worked with, it's like they are every bit as diverse as we are. Literally. There are no two alike. They're not going to be two alike. The ones that were in the clan, I counted 60 different individuals coming in and out of there. And I had a notebook. I kept them all in, what they look like, sizes, everything. And we had a few that had the conial head. We had some that had the flatter nose. We had some that were dark skinned. We had some that were light skinned. I had one that I was really close with that actually had come up to me. I was out in the side yard, and he came up like 10 foot from me, and he was out in the open, and his head was not shaped any different than a regular human man. And he had hair. His entire face was hair, very short hair, but it was all over his face. His eyelids had hair. The inside of his ears had hair, and then on top, his hair was all slicked back. He reminded me of somebody from that show Happy Days. They had the greased back hair.
Oh, the Fonz.
Yeah. And then as it got down on his chest, it went from that short cropped hair to about 2 to 3 inches length. And he was white from head to toe. He had, his skin underneath was Caucasian. And then on his upper arm, on the, it would be his left, it was like a black stripe that was on the upper arm. Like you would think somebody, it was a tattoo. And that really surprised me because I wasn't anticipating that. And then my son was coming across the field, and I hollered to him because there was also one cutting through the tall grass on its belly. And then there was another one across from me on the other side of the woods, and I didn't want to scare my son. So I hollered to my son. And when I looked over, it scared the one standing next to me, and he cloaked in front of me. But they are all entirely different. Okay. You have some that are more slender build, some are stockier. You've got some with the longer faces, some that have absolutely no hair on their face whatsoever. And then you have some that are more like a beard. Now, if you look at the logo that we have for the Hominology Center that I work with Igor Borstev, is actually his idea to do. He's the director of it. And on our t-shirts and on our logo, you see a picture of a Sasquatch that a local artist drew for me. That is actually of a real Bigfoot. His name is Samuel. Yeah, he's out of the Appalachian Mountains. And he looks very human-like, except what you would think of somebody that possibly would have like a beard or a mustache or that type of thing. But that's actually, from an actual Bigfoot. They just are 100% different. You may see, just like with our own people, you'll see some that have similarities that are the same, or maybe a hereditary trait down from father to child or mother to child or whatever. Yeah. But they really and truly are all different.
So you're saying like sometimes they have like beards almost look like they're like a backwoods hillbilly with a beard, just just like that.
I've seen them with a full beard. I've seen them that have the shorter. Yeah. And, you see your females, and they'll use anything, whether it's vines and leaves to going through someone's trash and finding ribbon or a fabric that they can rip apart. They'll braid their hair. They'll put the fabric in it. They'll put the ribbons in it. They'll put flowers in it. The males will do it. The females will do it. You'll see them walk around with animal skins on. I mean, they are human. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they're not 100% human like us, but they are a human hybrid. The Ketchum study was accurate. Unfortunately, not everything came out because of all the hate that came flying at everybody on the study. There was no reason to continue. But, they are a human hybrid, 100%.
Yeah, Bama Bigfoot says that you made contact with their group leader for them.
I did, and I love her. Nice. She is, let me tell you something about Bama. She is one of the coolest ladies out there and as legit as it gets. I love her. Absolutely love her. I'm very blessed. I consider her a friend. But yeah. Yeah,
Bama Bigfoot's good people. But funny we talk about that, that you helped her. We talked about some things not too long ago. This was before I even asked you to come on my show. This might have been almost a year ago. I think we were talking about mind speak? Because I was just I wasn't picky about. I was just curious, and I wanted to know more. And you kind of gave me some intel,
Yeah.
and you told me about my backyard. And everyone needs to know that that's in this chat that you don't know where I live. I never told you my address.
No.
I never told you exactly where I live. I never give you like a a Google Earth shot, nothing like that. And you described the wood pile in my backyard over the fence to a T. And you said that the Squatch on my property will hang out in that area in my backyard woods and look over and watch me from my backyard because if I stand in that pile, you can see a clear shot of my whole backyard. And you got all that wood and tree and stuff as camouflage to keep you safe and from being seen. So I was blown away when you told me that, and then when you gave me the name, I was like, wow.
And I think if I remember correctly, I described the foot that was there.
Yeah, you did. You said
what
it was like a tan.
Yeah, and what happens is when they're talking to me, as soon as they go to talk to me, it doesn't matter what's talking to me. When it talks to me, I get an image of them in my mind. So it makes it really easy. And if I get something that is portraying itself to be something other than what it is, it's like I can see what it is trying to portray itself to be. But at the same time, it's like I can look through it and see what it actually is, which really sucks for the reptilian because they've tried to do that to me a few times and try to get me to think that there's something they're not. And unfortunately for them, I can kind of see it. So it doesn't go well. But yeah. And the thing is that I never started out going, I'm going to be somebody that does podcasts or I'm going to be somebody that's going to help people. I feel very blessed when I can help somebody. I get people that'll come up to me and say, thank you so much. And I'm like, don't thank me. I thank you because you're allowing me, into your life to talk to you about a subject that not only that I love, but I feel blessed to be able to help anybody. Most people don't know who I am. I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me. I don't go out and promote myself, but people hear about me from word of mouth. And, various people will say, oh, you know what, you should talk to Robyn or whatever. And if I can help, I'm more than happy to do that. Again, I am not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't believe there are experts. I know a lot of people think that they are, and they've told me that they are. I don't, and this is why. There is no way to know everything on this. Number one, they're never going to tell us everything. That's not ever going to happen. So
that's the truth. The experts are the government. The government is the expert, and they're not giving up none of their evidence, truth, or documents. So
and they're gonna lie about it anyway. And I've had my own dealings with having to deal with that. But the thing is that if I'm in a position to help somebody and they ask me for my help, or if they just want to talk to me and download some experiences, I'm all for it. I wasn't in a situation where I had that. Not because of anybody's fault, but because I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And if it makes it easier for somebody, to have somebody to talk to, I'm all for it. There have been situations where people have had problems with different ones and they've asked me for help. And if I can help, I always do. Yeah. I don't want anything. I don't ask for anything. I just simply, I'm here, and if somebody needs me, they know how to get hold of me. I mean, that's pretty much it. I was very blessed with the people that did help me when I finally found out there were people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have your information. If I ever someone comes to me having issues, I could always say, hey, I can turn you on to this lady Robyn. She does good work, and she might be able to help you.
Oh, you're so sweet. I appreciate that.
My friend Laura wants to know can you read other stuff besides Bigfoot? I think I already know the answer. Yes, because you do with the wolf people, the dog men. You already said reptilians tried to con you into thinking they were something else.
Yeah, I've been attacked by the reptilians. I mean, they're not the nicest of people. I talk to pretty much everything. I think I sent you the pictures too. Cat people, ETs, dimensionals, elementals, lizard man.
Little people.
And nobody was more surprised about the lizard man people than me because I never thought about it. I never tried to connect with them. So it wasn't anything that was on my radar. And all those pictures that I sent you were taken at my home. either in Michigan or here. I never went anywhere
Oh,
to
wow.
take the pictures.
Yeah, well, that's
So
just like me. I go in my backyard, and everything, all the evidence I need is in the woods behind my house because that's where all the activity is. But you live in South Carolina. That's home of the lizard man. I think it's Simpsonville. It's right near Myrtle Beach, is where the lizard man encounters have happened.
Bishopville,
Yeah,
yeah.
Bishopville. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't live by Bishopville, but the truth of the matter is they're all over the place. They're all through the
Oh yeah.
South, you know. Do I think that they go even farther north? I think probably in the nicer months they will, but I don't necessarily believe that they really like a lot of the cold. The
Yeah.
picture that I sent you of the lizard man, this is really what went on. There is a way to get photos. There is. And these things cloak. I know that's kind of a controversial topic, but the thing is, they do. They cloak. They cloak or they shimmer.
Mm-hmm.
When you see it like the predator thing, that's more the
Right.
shimmer. Cloaking is completely 100%. You can't see them. Now, my husband, Pat, is also telepathic, and he's phenomenal at it. And him and I both, we verify everything to make sure we get it right. We both asked him, and they said the same thing. We bend light. That's how you don't see us anymore, is we just simply bend the light. So when you go and you take your camera and you just take random pictures outside, if they are cloaked, they show up. They really do. When you get the blurry photos, it's because you've actually centered the camera on them. They radiate a type of energy. Some people call it infrasound. Other people say it's not infrasound. It's another kind of energy. And it's at a higher energy level than what we normally have.
It's a different frequency that we can't pick up.
It really is, and they have a higher vibration. And so that's what causes the blurriness. It really and truly is. So if you're going to take and center them on that camera, you're going to get a blurry photo. Now, if you see, like, let's say you see one out walking around and you're going to try to take a picture, offset it. Don't put it in the center of the screen. Take a picture of the tree next to it. Make that your focal point, and it won't be as blurry. So I had went outside and I was just I knew they were out there. They had been mind speaking all day long. The dogs were going crazy. And I'm like, okay, who's out there that is causing such a ruckus? So I went and I took all these random pictures, went in the house, and I found a few Bigfoots in them. No big deal. Next thing you know, there's a lizard man. I was like, I wasn't even looking for him.
Wow.
So yeah, there's ways to get photos.
That's a good way to do it, because I know, like, some of the things that I've picked up where I could almost see something almost as clear as day is what I'll do, like just random burst shots across, like just panning.
Oh yeah.
Not focused, just panning and just doing like a 10 burst shot over like a panoramic view, and that's when you can actually get something you can see. When you're, like I said, when you're focusing on one area and you might feel that something's there, they're gonna use their frequency to keep that almost
raise it.
Give them their raise it up.
Yeah. Now, like the picture of the baby dogman that I have, that was another one completely by accident. I was laying in bed. I was exhausted. We had just moved into this house. It was like 8:30 at night, but it was still sunny out, but I was tired. So I was just laying in bed watching TV. I had put my pajamas on already. And he's like, come outside, come outside. I get that a lot. They want to see me. Why? I don't know. It has to do with the energy that I radiate, and they like to pull energy from me. And he said, I would just come outside so I can see you. And I said, listen, I'm not coming outside. I'm tired. And he said, no, I'll let you take my picture. I said, none of you ever want anybody to take your picture. He says, no, I promise. I said, okay, but here's the deal. If I go out there and I don't get a picture of you, you've now lied to me, which means I'm not talking to you anymore. And I know how to read their energy, and it's like a signature. So if somebody comes to me and says, I'm Mr. X, and I've normally talked to that Mr. X, I know what his energy signature is. So if another one comes up saying to be the same one and it's different, I'm done. I'm not talking to it because he's lying. And so I told him, I said, if I don't get my picture, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. No, I promise you will. Just go out and point it at the trees. Well, I live in the woods. I mean, which tree, So I go out there. He's like, I'm at the back in the tallest pine tree. I'm like, okay. I take pictures. There he is. I was like, okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going through some of your pictures now, and what I'm seeing, what really tricked me out is the handprint that's on that shirt. I guess it's a shirt.
No, it's a pillow.
Okay, pillow.
Okay, here's the story on the handprint. This is crazy. My husband Pat was at work. I was home by myself. I went in the bedroom. I vacuumed, and he has this Star Wars pillow that has Chewbacca on it. Okay, because he's a total nerd. He loves Star Wars. And I'd cleaned the whole bedroom, made the bed, vacuumed, whatever, and I had the Chewbacca turned around backwards so the black backing was sticking out because we have dogs and cats, and I didn't want the hair all over the Chewbacca part. There was nothing on it. It was completely clean. I came out of the bedroom, and when I did, there was white powder, this like chalk, all over my floor in a pile. And I'm like, okay, I don't know who's playing in the house, which, you know, a lot of the Bigfoot kids, I don't care if they come in. As long as they behave themselves, I don't care. And there was a fingerprint in it. And I said, but I'm trying to clean house. I don't want to clean up anymore. So I went to go get a broom and dustpan. I came back and most of it was gone, and you could see where they were trying to wipe it away with their hands. There's like fingerprints in it. So I cleaned up the rest of it, went on about my day, never went back in the bedroom. Pat gets home from work. He walks in the bedroom and he comes out and he says, hey, what's with the giant handprint? I said, what are you talking about? He said, the handprint on my pillow. He said, that's funny. He said, when did you do that? Because it was the way it's open, the thumb is set much wider open than like on one of ours. Yeah. It wasn't so much that it was that much bigger. Pat has large hands anyway. It was a little bigger, but it wasn't like enormous. It was where the thumb and the first finger go. It's just you can't open it that wide. We just can't. And he said, that's really cool. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. So I go in there and here's this giant handprint. I said, that was not there earlier. I was in here. I cleaned it from top to bottom. So then we go out of there and there's white powder on my TV stand. I was like, you guys are crazy. And then like a week after the handprint on his pillow, he was working for FedEx at the time, and he had the little FedEx shorts. And he had him sitting in the bathroom. He went in to take a shower, and there was another handprint on his shorts.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I did a podcast for Pork and Beans, Brian Blaine and Mike Carroll.
I know Pork and Beans, Patrick Giggy, I think.
Yes, I love that whole group. But anyway, we were doing a podcast. There was myself, the guys, and Doreen Fisher. And at the time, we had really bad weather going here. And the only signal I could get was if I was in my bathtub. So I put a chair in my bathtub, and I have like a triangle-shaped corner tub. I'm sitting in this stupid bathtub, and I'm doing this podcast thinking, I don't want everybody knowing I'm in my bathtub. I mean, I was dressed. I was sitting on a chair. I look off to the side, and there's this humongous handprint on the wall.
Oh, wow.
On a wall that nobody touches. You know, Pat has a stand-up shower. I'm the only one that uses that bathtub. And I'm like, guys. And they're all talking. I'm like, guys. They keep talking. Guys, keep talking. I'm like, guys. And I'm like screaming. And they're like, what's the matter? Are you all right? And I'm like, enormous handprint off to the left. And they said, what are you talking about? So I flashed it. And they were so funny. They were like cracking up. I said, this wasn't there this morning. Like it really and truly was not there. So yeah, we get handprints a lot. When I first moved here, my refrigerator is black. And the first week we were here, there were so many muddy handprints on that refrigerator. It drove me nuts. I'm like, all I'm doing is cleaning up the refrigerator. For the most part, I really and truly, I don't have issues with them. Like they have never, you know, have things gotten broken? Yeah. Have they come in and trashed my house? No. The only time that ever happened was I was living in Swartz Creek, Michigan, or not Swartz Creek, New Lothrop, Michigan. And there was a group that was running through there, and an adolescent male actually physically got in the house. And I came home and my carpet was pulled up and my appliances were dumped.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a mess. But that was the only time. You know, they get in now. And I found muddy footprints. You know, the other day, everybody was gone. And my son-in-law was here. He was sleeping. And because he wasn't feeling well. And he heard the dogs bark. And when they were barking, they sounded mad. And he thought, gosh, what's going on? So he gets up. And the doors that were locked are now unlocked. And there's muddy footprints in the house. So they go out. The footprints go out onto the deck. He goes to the bottom of the porch. And in the mud are toe prints. But they didn't get into anything. I mean, they didn't hurt anything, you know. There are certain ones that because they're older or they've got young children or whatever, Pat and I will say, I don't care if you're in as long as you don't destroy the house and you come in peace. As long as you come in peace, I'm okay. And so most of them, they know they're not to come in. But you have to understand too, the one that tore apart the house in Michigan came in a physical form. Most of the time, and they have come in physical form and not damaged a bunch of stuff, but sometimes they'll come in shadow form. It's very disconcerting to be laying in bed and then see something walk through your wall, walk through the end of the bed and keep walking and go right through another wall.
I was going to ask you that, like, if they're getting in your house, are they coming through, like, are they using the paranormal energy, or are they using their physical flesh and blood energy when they do that?
Both.
Okay.
I had, and this is a goofy story about one that I'm excessively close to. He's been around me for a decade. And I was at my house in Michigan, and at that time I was a single mom, and I'd bought these things called Muddy Buddies. They're by Chex, and they're filled with peanut butter and chocolate and covered in powdered sugar, and they're like really incredible. And I had a really stressful week, and I thought, I'm taking the kids to school, I'm coming home, I'm putting on my comfy clothes, and I'm going to eat my Muddy Buddies. And I had them sitting on the counter. And I had just cleaned the whole house. So, I mean, it wasn't like there was a big mess anywhere. They were the only thing sitting on the counter. I take the kids to school. I come back. There's muddy tracks going up my porch. I open the door. There's muddy tracks all through my kitchen. And the bag of Muddy Buddies is gone. And I'm like, I know I had him here. I was more worried about that than I was the muddy footprint. I go out in the woods because I used to put food out for him there. Don't do that. It's not a great idea. That clan was so kind. I could anything. They were just tremendous with me, but I wouldn't recommend that for people. And I walked out in the woods, and here's the empty bag. I'm like, are you kidding me? So years later, I'm in Walmart, and and he's mind speaking to me, and he's like, well, you need Muddy Buddies. And I'm like, okay. So I go grab a bag of Muddy Buddies. He said, what's this for? He says, I owe you one from before. You are so rotten,
Oh wow! That's funny you say that, because I don't gift food, but I have put in like apples out that if they're gonna go bad, I throw them in the trash, and I have like one of those zip seal bags.
Yeah.
And instead of throwing them in the trash, I'll put them in the gifting area where I put my shells and the old straw that I put out every winter to keep them warm. So when I put apples over there, they're in a sealed bag. It's like a zip seal bag, and they're probably a couple days from going rotten, but they don't care. They'll eat them anyway. But when I come back, there's a slice across the side of the bag, and the bag's still there, and all the apples are gone. I'm like, well, that tells me one thing. There's no other animal that can get those out of a bag like that, except for something that has appendages, fingers. And there's no homeless people living in back there either, because it's just a little bit of land. It's a couple of acres. It's probably about 60 to 100 acres of land. Then it goes back across over the road, and then there's a huge creek that goes for 50 miles plus.
Are there hills back there?
There's like a lot of hills back. There's a couple big hills, yes.
Okay, because they're showing me the hills, and they're saying we come from the far side of the hills.
Oh, wow, yeah. There's a couple hills, and then there's another hill that's along the bike trail that's out of my area that me and my son will stop at. We'll walk up that little hill and see like all kinds of bends, structures, X's, huge stomping prints, matted down ground. It almost looks like a party area where they have like little powwows or something.
Well, here's how I started with the food, because I didn't know to. As a kid, they just, wherever I was at, they would show up. It was that simple. And as I got older, even if I was in the car with my parents, we're driving down the road, I'm watching the woods, and every now and then I'd see flashes of them. So when I got to this place in Michigan, I had never put out food for them. When I was living in New Lothrop, they would go, I knew they wanted eggs from the chickens, and they had asked if they could. And I said, yes, just leave some for me. And they did. But I never put like per se food out. And I had put a bag of dog food on my porch, and I hadn't opened it yet. And they sliced open the bag and took the entire bag. But I still had never put food out. When I got to White Cloud in Michigan, I went out there, and I would walk in the woods. I knew they were there. We had a friend that had gone on the property, and we didn't even know he was coming. We were gone for the day. We came back, and he came running out of the woods, and he said, "Why didn't you tell me you hired somebody in a white gorilla suit to walk around the property to scare me?" And I said, "Yeah, because we're so wealthy, that's what we do. We randomly hire people to walk around our yard in a gorilla suit." I mean, it made no sense. So when the kids went to school, I would walk around the perimeter. We had 10 acres, the perimeter of the yard, and I would talk to them. And then by the third trip around, they would knock a tree across the path, and I'd say, "And this is me laughing at you and walking around the tree."
Wow.
Well, then something told me they wanted apples. So I'd put apples out. And then it just kind of elaborated. And that was at the back of the woods. And then I was so, because I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. I was thinking, well, there's so many of them, they're probably hungry. So I was trying to prove, not to myself, but more to other people, that they really were there. And what I was seeing was legit. And so I would take things out and I would set it up in a way that an animal couldn't get it. I would take a milk crate, put it upside down, put a plate of food under there, and put 3 concrete blocks on top of it, like the cinder block.
Yeah.
I'd go out there the next day. It had been, the whole crate, cinder blocks and everything was lifted up completely. The plate was removed and sat back down exactly in the same spot. So this went on. Well, I happened to be at the back of the woods one day, and I'm like, "There's actually apple trees back here. Why am I buying all these apples if you clowns have got apple trees?" So I said, "You're on your own. Get your own apples." But I used to take the apples and I'd put them in the crevices of the trees, like where the branches would V out. So they thought that they were actually growing on the tree. So when I stopped buying apples and doing that, I went out there one day, and every apple off the apple trees in the back had been picked. And I thought, boy, you guys really were hungry. You cleared out 4 or 5, trees. I walked towards the middle of the woods, and they had put them in the exact same crevices of the trees that I had done for them for like a year.
Wow.
And I
That's
thought,
funny.
if that didn't show a higher intelligence to me, nothing did.
Oh, yeah.
Then, Michigan winters, we get a lot of snow. And it dawned on me one day, they're coming to the house every night. So I'll go out with them. And I had been doing this for over a year. And I thought, why am I hauling all this food to the very back through the snow and everything? They're coming to the house anyway. So I went like 70 feet off my end of my house, and I just set up a feeding area there. And I would take my leftovers out. I would take, various things they want. And then I would also set up things so that I knew without a shadow of a doubt, even though I'd physically seen it, that it was them. I had this welded cage that there was only one door on it. I would put food in it, and I would put locks all the way around it so that no animal could pry that up. I'd go out there, the locks were taken off and hanging on the side of the cage. Another animal is not going to undo a snap.
No.
It's just not. And somebody said, "Oh, put a trail cam up." Okay, fine. I put a trail cam up. I went out there the next day, and they had taken all this brush and covered it on top of it, of the trail cam. And the only thing I got out of it was a picture of a thumb and a breast. So I got pictures of that. Then I had somebody give me a video camera, and they're like, "Oh, try to get a video cam." And I'm like, this isn't going to go well. I put it out in the yard, and I put a clothes basket over the top of it. And I did get pictures of them running across the front of it till they figured out what it was. And then you saw sticks flying at the camera, and you heard the camera getting slapped and sticks in front of it. So I said, forget it. We're not doing that again.
No. That's funny. It's funny you mentioned the trees, because I've noticed on my property from going back out there riding 4-wheelers in the trails, there are certain areas where it's a perfectly open trail, probably 6 feet wide, and there's like three sections right now where trees that have, I would say, 20-inch diameter are completely tumbled over these trails, blocking the trails. So I guess that means don't ride your 4-wheeler in the trail.
Yeah, they don't like the 4-wheelers. They really don't. It's the noise.
Probably
it's
loud,
everything about it. Yeah. No, after we had moved here, we had been here. We moved in March, and as soon as hurricane season started. And when we moved down here, we literally moved with nothing. Everything was in storage because we drove down here and we had so many animals that took up the entire vehicle. Right. And so I didn't have any tools or anything here. And I noticed a tree, and Igor Borstev just was really excited about this and stunned. But we have these 30, 40-foot pine trees. And the tree, I heard of this creaking, and I went outside, and it was starting to come down. And I thought, as soon as this hurricane hits, and we're in the Midlands, so we're off the coast, but it was supposed to go up that far. And I thought, it's going to come down on the garage, and above our garage is a bonus room. And I said to my husband, I said, we got to find we didn't know anybody here. I'm like, we've got to find somebody or some way to get this tree down, because as soon as the storm hits, we're done. And it was supposed to hit like 2 days. So I went out on the porch, and I'm like, guys, I really try not to ask for any help unless I absolutely have to. But, you know, you like to play up in that bonus room. I keep finding muddy footprints, and it's going to be taken out if that tree comes down. Like, could really use the assist. Okay. Number one, they have their own laws. They have their own culture. One of the laws is they are not allowed to interfere with our lives. Some of them do anyway. Mm-hmm. And so I never expected anything to be done. I have mini pigs, and I was in the garage, and they had their bed and their litter box and their pool and their toys and everything in the garage. I had an attached garage, and I was getting them buckled down, and I heard this whooshing sound go down on the side of the house. And Pat and I ran out in the garage, and we're like, what in the world was that? And we're looking around. We couldn't figure out what it was. And I looked over, and I said, oh my God, Pat, the tree's gone. That huge 30-foot tree is gone. And it didn't hit the house. So I went and I looked at it. Not only was it down, when a tree falls, it falls. This was lifted up and pulled back 10, 15 feet behind the stump, which it's not going to go backwards. No. And then it was broken off at the top. So when it came down, it was never in any danger of hitting the house.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, thank you so much. You know, I mean, they've been helpful. They've saved my life about 4 times. They've saved my husband's once, you know, and they have really been helpful. We had a situation where Pat and I, it was his day off, and we were just kind of relaxing very early in the morning, laying on the bed, you know, half awake, half watching TV. And somebody was like pounding on the wall outside the bedroom. And I have a 2-story house, but my bedroom is on the first floor. And it was like, they literally felt like an earthquake in our room, but it wasn't anywhere else in the house. And so Pat and I asked, what's wrong? You know, because they're always knocking on the walls and climbing on the roof and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And nobody answered. All we heard was a lot of panic, but couldn't get really anything clear to understand what the problem was. So we went back to watching our show, and it started up again, and we looked at each other and said, we got to get outside. Something's wrong. Went outside, and our front tree had come down on our power line, and it was setting the ground on fire because it was fall. And so it was putting sparks out on the ground, and it would catch the leaves on fire. And there was like 7 or 8 piles that were on fire. And you would see that predator effect of shimmering go to each pile, a swirl go around it, and the fire would go out. And basically, they wanted us to know, you know, this could have burned the whole woods down as well as the house. But had they not done that, we wouldn't have known.
Wow.
And they've come to us and warned us, you know, if there's anything out there that shouldn't be there. But my property, I do energy work. I keep it bubbled. I move energy, and we seem to have pretty good luck here. I mean, I've only had a couple things not really nice come at me while I was here, and that was ETs. It wasn't, you know, any of the cryptids.
Wow. You want to talk about the ETs a little bit?
Sure.
You know, I mean, if you're not comfortable, you don't have to. I was just seeing if you wanted to go down.
It doesn't faze me. It really doesn't faze me anymore. My first abduction, I was 4. And that was, according to them, they had taken me before that, but I don't have any memory of that, you know, to say that they had or not. They did not hurt me at that time. I had what felt female to me was mine speaking with me in one corner, and she reached her very bony arm and fingers that had very large knuckles and joints, and just kind of tried to touch my hand. I was 4 years old, you know, I didn't, and, you know, I looking back, I don't understand why I wasn't scared. So when they say they had taken me previously, they must have, because I wasn't frightened at all. And I was just more like, you know, when my mom finds out that I'm not at home in my bed, you are in so much trouble. You better get me home right now, you know? And in the room that I was in, behind me was a small gray. Had these big, huge buttons all over these. The whole place was white. And it had these multicolored buttons that were on the wall. And he would hit a pattern and they would light up. And then there was an arc doorway, and there were like glyphs and patterns all the way around the arc of this doorway. And then when you look through the doorway, there was a man on a table, and the man never moved. He never moved. I don't know if he was alive. I don't know if he was dead. I didn't get the impression he was dead, but he wasn't moving either. The thing that was really crazy about it, and I didn't realize until many years later, was he was laying on what looked like a modern day CAT scan machine. However, this was in 1968. The CAT scan machines we have now, we didn't have then. So, you know, it was really just crazy. And there were two tall grays there, and then another short gray that was on the wall behind them, and they had the lights there as well. But they've come on and off my entire life. I mean, good ones, bad ones. I had one situation here where Pat was asleep. I was watching TV. It was late at night. I was very much awake. I have chronic insomnia, so I wasn't, you know, asleep at all. I looked at the end of the bed, and there was some ETs at the end of the bed. I went to turn my head, and there was a taller one next to me. And as soon as I went to move, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything to fight it. I couldn't talk. I couldn't get hold of Pat to say, you know, this is what's going on. But this tall, grayish white color ET was standing next to the bed, and he, whatever it was, put what was the shape of an upside down colander on my head with tentacles. And these tentacles were alive, and they felt rubbery and slimy, and they were moving all over my face, all over the back of my head. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. And I started to panic, and then I stopped. Okay. I know how to do energy work. I know how to move energy. I also know how to use it as a defense. And normally I'll shoot it like from my hands or whatever, but I also know how to do it for my entire body. And I had to get in the mindset where I took myself out of what was going on and said, okay, you've been trained on how to do this. Quit focusing on the ET and just move the energy, because what happens, good energy will kill anything negative.
Right.
They cannot survive it. And it's like being shocked with an electric fence. And that's what I did. And that's all it took. And it was gone.
Wow.
You know, but we have UFOs over the house all the time. That's normal. That's not, you know, I showed you the photo that we had gotten on our security camera out front, and it was a UFO above the house, underneath of it. And this is outside my garage.
You talking about the beam picture with the beam coming down on your house?
No, that was a different one. Yeah.
Wow, that was intense. That was crazy.
Yeah, there's a beam of light coming from UFO coming down in my bedroom. Yeah, that showed up on the security camera as well. The other one was a triangular shaped craft above the bonus room over the garage, and underneath of it was a portal that opened up and a head coming out of it.
Oh gosh.
You know, these are my normal. It really is. And the thing is,
a day in the life of Robyn.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, it would be different if I was the only one that saw these things, because then I could say I was really crazy. But one, I'm normal in the rest of my life. And two, other people see things when they're around me. They just do. You know, friends, family members, whatever, they experience all these things. You know, my son-in-law came to visit, and he had known, you know, I have contact with these things. He's known it for years, and he was fine with that. He went to pull in the driveway, and a Bigfoot steps out from behind a tree. You know, by the first night, things are tapping on his window, and he's in the second floor. Things are climbing on the roof on the second floor. And I have night vision goggles that Igor had bought for him and I to use. And you can take pictures and videos or whatever with them. And when Igor went to go back to Russia, I was having so much fun with them. He took pity on me and let me keep him here. And so my son-in-law wanted to use it. And he was going outside, and he's like, they're running all over the yard. Like, this goes on all night long. And like the first 2 weeks, I thought, he's going to have a paranormal meltdown. He really is. And I'm like, you have to pace yourself. It's going to be okay. But Mom, you need to have a consensus about what's allowed to go on here. I said, I do. As long as they come in peace, I don't zap their ass. That's just the way it works.
Laura wants to know where you live, because I know where you live, but she was asking where you live. If you want to disclose it, you don't have to, but you could just say the state.
I live in the Midlands in South Carolina, but I will say this, in all honesty, this has happened everywhere I've ever lived my entire life. This happens when I go out of state. This happens when I go out of the country. It doesn't matter where I go. It just always something happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, they're all over. My next door neighbor was very shocked to find out they were here. I did tell her, because she's just a wonderful woman. I adore her. And if I'm living next door to her, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want her frightened. And so I sat her down and I told her, and she's like, if anybody else were to tell me this, I'd probably laugh at them.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I feel like with you it's true? And I said, because I have nothing to gain by telling you this other than you not wanting to be around me anymore, or thinking I'm nuts. You know, and so she finally, like the following year, her grandson saw one walking through my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very next night, her adult son was over. They were getting ready for a wedding reception in her backyard, and he was clearing brush, and he went to go toss the brush into the woods, and he heard like a growling noise. He looked up and here's this enormous black Bigfoot standing there. And so her grandson came over to get me to come over there. And I guess that her adult son had ran in the house and said, Mom, give me a gun, give me a gun. She said, what do you need a gun for? And he says, you won't believe what I saw. And she said, wait a minute, Robyn already said no guns. You don't want that fight.
Mm-hmm. No,
you know, and you don't. The thing of it is they're all telepathic. They work under the law of Ra, which is the law of one. They work as a collective. If one of them thinks anything, if one of them feels anything, the rest do.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want that war. Even if you take one down, you've made enemies of the rest of them. And they're the way they deal with things, their laws are an eye for an eye. And it's not going to go to just you. It will go to your family, and it'll go down and down and down.
It'll go down generations, where every generation
100%,
after you is cursed because you hurt or killed one of those.
Yeah. And it can be something as subtle as making you crazy and then making your children crazy or whatever. And it really, that's the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but they work as a collective. Now, they brought a baby in the yard back in Michigan. This was eons ago. They brought me a lot of kids, but I mean, this was one of the children that they had brought. And I knew when it happened, this is a test. Like, if I screw this up, I'm cut off, I'm done, you know. And they let me get within probably maybe 50 feet or less of this infant. Wow. And she had come into the yard, and I went out there, and I had a friend that was with me, and they didn't let her get as close, but she was permitted to get probably 150 feet from it.
Wow.
And so, again, I'm not by myself when this is happening. People are seeing this. Mm-hmm. And I knew when she was showing me this baby, who was absolutely precious, but I knew if I didn't handle this correctly, it would be a matter of a second, and I would have every single one of them all over me. But she also knew that, you know, I'm not going to hurt this child. And so she was there for like 15 minutes, and she finally got ready to leave, and she bent over, picked up the baby, and was walking off. And I started to follow her, and she let me follow her for maybe 75 to 100 feet. And then she very clearly said to me in my mind, she said, I'm sorry, you know, she's like, this is as far as you can go. And I said, okay, that's fine. And then she was evaporated. Like, she had to have cloaked because she was just like gone. She wasn't anywhere. She was just gone. But then within 12 hours, they were coming out of the woodwork. It's like, oh, okay, she didn't try to hurt us, so she must be safe, because, you know, they were just everywhere. Just everywhere.
Nice. I was going to say, I had to have trusted you with the baby, and I was going to ask you, do the babies look more human when they're first babies than they do look more of like a, you know, animalistic?
Yeah. This particular one was liver colored, and the skin was liver colored, and the head wasn't as hairy as you would, you know, a regular Bigfoot would be. So I think in that respect, it looked a little bit more human, but its body was covered in hair.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't long hair, but it was covered in hair.
Right.
The other babies that they've brought were old enough where they were moving around, and they actually, those ones looked more like little chimps.
Really?
Yeah, I have a picture of one. There was actually twins, and I didn't know they were in the bushes. And I had taken I was taking random pictures. And at first glance, when you look at it, it looks like tall grass with a black blob in it. Until you enlarge it, and you can completely see every facial feature he has. And he's got this big bulbous nose and no hair on his face, And in that particular one, the face looked more human, but the body was still covered in hair. I went out, I pulled into the driveway one day, and I had, the feeding area was off the end of the house. And I just went and got groceries, and I, instead of parking in the driveway, drove to the other side of the house. It was on the same side of the house where the feeding area was at. And I didn't think anything about it. I didn't think, it was so early in the day, I didn't think anybody'd be out. And apparently the kids were there, and they were eating apples and stuff that I had out. I come around the corner of that house in the truck, and they just bombarded the truck with the apples. And I had bagels out and muffins out and stuff. And bagels and muffins are just, it scared the diet tar out of them. They went running, and they weren't so much throwing at me as just throwing it up in the air and getting out of there as fast as they could.
Wow, that's wild.
But they used to tell me they had this one area off my house that was like rectangular shape. They brought logs in and made it look like a giant playpen. And they would tell me, the babies are in there. We're going hunting. Don't let anybody hurt the babies. And I'd be like, okay. And I said, am I supposed to go out with the babies? And they said, no, just no, because they knew I could pick up if anything was coming in. And they're like, just, and I remote view. And so they were like, just watch and make sure the babies are safe. And I said, okay.
How do you know the area is like a nursing area? Is there certain things you can tell, like how the branches and the trees are set up, or like there's sticks scattered out, or it's just everything is kind of just flustered like a huge camo of just trees bushed down? I mean, how can you tell if I was looking for...
Yeah, I think other people would think something a little bit differently in my particular case, because again, everything is individualized. Hey, Duke, there's World Bigfoot Radio, guys. One of the best guys out there. This guy is like a brother to me. I adore him. He's one of my dearest friends. Nothing I would not do for him.
Duke's an awesome guy. Yeah,
he is. I got to give you his phone number too, so you can call him. But he is literally the best. Another one like Bama, 100% legitimate. I am so blessed to have him in my life. I just adore him. But as far as the knowing that it's a nursery, for me, I pick up the energy of the babies. You'll see a lot of the ground level structures, that the little ones are practicing on. For me, in both areas that I found that were nurseries, they had taken logs and literally made like these rectangular shaped areas that were huge. And it was like this gargantuan playpen.
Really? So it's just huge gargantuan like playpen set up for the baby.
Yeah. When there's a bunch of babies, but you'll see where they teach the kids to do the structures. You'll see these little tiny, and that doesn't mean that that's a baby area. It just means that some of the kids are out in that area learning how to do structures. Not the X's, like your smaller ground X's, that's a welcome. But, you'll see these ones where you'll see all these little tiny sticks all leaned up against, and they're probably only 6 to 8 inches, off the ground. And, they've got different things built and woven in there.
Little glyphs, little sticks, almost look like little it almost looks like letters. It almost seems like they're trying to make letters on the ground out of the sticks and twigs.
They do have their own alphabet.
I see that.
Yeah, they do have their own alphabet. And the other thing too is there are, and this is my opinion, guys, from what I've seen in all the different areas I've been in. Yes, there is a basis for the stick structures as far as what certain things mean for everybody, like the upright X's, stay out. However, what I've learned and what I've been told by various clans is, while there are some bases that are, a borderline across for everybody, each clan will also take them and make their own structures so that only their clan's members know it. So outside clans won't.
Right. That's a good way to do it, so they can't pick up on that clans if they're doing things. The
Yep.
outside clans won't know what they're doing because it's their symbol.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really. Does anybody have any questions for Robyn since she's here? Because we're probably going to be another 10, 15 minutes, and then we're probably going to close it. So I want to do, if anyone has questions, I'd like for anyone to answer questions while we have Robyn tonight. So, because she has a lot of good, she knows a lot. So.
Well, here's the thing. The only reason anybody has even heard of me anymore is Duke.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I've heard you on Duke's show.
Yeah,
I've heard you on Duke's show several times. I've heard you on I think Dogman Encounters Radio or Big World. Bigfoot.
I've been on that.
Yep.
In the Dark. Tracy Bush and
I.
We're crazy. Like Tracy Bush and I get going, and it's like all holds bar, and it goes for hours, and it's like it goes really in depth.
I think you were on Wes Germer too, weren't you on Wes Germer's show once?
No, I was not.
Okay.
No,
because I did like when I was up and coming to get my encounters off my chest because it was bothering me so much. I was able to get on Wes Germer's Sasquatch Chronicles. I think it was in 2016 or something when I was on one of. So I give him thanks for helping me get to get rid of my encounter off my because when things like that eat up at your heart. It just to tell someone that can understand your story, that can relate. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
It makes all the difference in the world. Well, I met Duke because, it is all Duke's fault. Blame him, you guys. But what had happened was he was going to do a show with Igor. Igor was staying at my home at the time. And so was Janice Carter. And so Igor's like, oh, no, you guys got to be on the show with me. And I said, well, we weren't supposed to be on the show. They want you. And he's like, I don't care. I want you guys to do it. So him and Janice and I got on to do the show for World Bigfoot Radio. Right. And I will go to my grave saying that Duke and I knew each other in a past life. Okay, I will. Because from the second we met, we clicked. And he's been one of my dearest friends ever since. And then, I've done countless shows for him. And then he introduces me to people. But then he tells me, for the last 2 years, I've been vetting you out. I know how legit you are. And I'm like, good to know. 2 years later, now you're going to tell me you vetted me? Which I didn't care. That doesn't bother me at all. It was just a funny joke between him and I. But, that's how I met him, was because of Igor. Igor came to my house because when I was in Michigan, I had only talked to one person. His name is Bob Daigle, one of the dearest people you'll ever meet. He owns and operates Michigan Bigfoot. And he knew what was going on at my property. He was the only one I ever had there. He's the only one I ever talked to. And he had gone, to a conference at Salt Fork in Ohio. And Igor was there, and he called me and he said, would you mind if I talked to him about your case? And I'm like, no, go ahead. So apparently he did. And he called me back and he's like, he wants to come to your house. And I said, I don't let anybody come to my house because it's their place, not mine.
Right.
And I said, do you trust him? And he said, yeah, I trust him with my life. And I'm like, yeah, but you want me. I know you vet everybody. I said, but you want me to trust them with their lives. Okay. This isn't just me and my kids. This is them. He's like, no, he's safe. I said, okay. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who anybody in the Bigfoot field was. He came to my house. He was supposed to be there 3 or 4 hours. He stayed 10 days. And before he left, he got me to agree to go to do the International Scientific Conference in Siberia.
Yeah, so he stayed with you for a while when he came to your place first, didn't he? He stayed for 10 days, you're saying?
He stayed for 10 days.
He was having fun.
And then I went to Siberia and came back, and then he would come and he'd spend 3 and 4 months at a time with me. And then he would go do the rest of the tour of the U.S. the way he wanted to or whatever, but he'd start at my place and end at my place. And then I went to South Carolina. So when I came to South Carolina, it was just the normal progression of things. Him and I did a lot of research at my property. Yeah, I mean,
I wish I could have came out there. Yeah, I wish I could have came out there when he was out there because I'm only 3 hours away. I would love to meet you and Igor
and
at the same time.
He was going to come here when he was in the States the last time, but I didn't know he was planning on coming. It was a last minute thing, and he's like, oh, I'm going to come get my room ready because I have a 5-bedroom house. At the time he was planning on coming, I literally had family in from everywhere. My whole house was packed. And when he's here, he's working. My dining room becomes his office, which is perfectly fine. He has his own bedroom, that has his ensuite bathroom, and he's very comfortable. But I didn't have any of that available for him. And I didn't have time to do a lot of research because I had all these family members in. So I felt horrible. First time in 11 years that it just didn't work out.
That's sad that one time happened, but you can't control things. I mean, now you got dogs.
I didn't know.
Now you got dogs. Now your house is occupied by dogs because they're inside because you got these the big feet running around outside and they're stirring your dogs up in the house.
Oh, what I've done is when we first bought this house, it has an attached 2.5-car garage, and my husband is like, oh, I've always wanted an attached car, garage. I can't wait. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I'm sure in some lifetime that will happen for him. However, what's actually happened is the mini pigs are out there, and all the big dogs have their kennels out there. And the cats, because I had a rescue, so the cat cages are out there. He's never going to be able to have anything in the garage. And I think he's a wonderful man for thinking that he will. And he's even better for tolerating my butt. Because it just never happened. So, because I can't handle all 15 dogs in the house. The little dogs are enough. So the big dogs go out there. Other than I actually have a chocolate lab that I got because of the Bigfoot. They got hold of myself and Janice Carter and her daughter Holly one day and said, listen, Robyn's got to save this dog. And so they brought it to my attention, and the Foots had already told it to me. And I said, okay, show me what it looks like so I know what I'm looking for. And it looked like a chocolate lab puppy, very, very small. I said, what is the big deal about this puppy? I have too many dogs. I don't want another dog. No, you have to, because one of our ancient one's souls are inside, because everything is reincarnated. One of the ancient one's souls are in this dog, and the dog is sick. If the puppy dies, then the ancient one dies with it. Oh, wow. So Janice, Holly, and I literally spent a month driving all over the state of South Carolina. Well, it wasn't a month. I take that back, 2 weeks. All over the state of South Carolina looking for this puppy. And we couldn't find it. And I had went to the SPCA by my house, and it wasn't there. So finally, Pat said to him, you got to work with us. And they kept saying, the puppy's going to die. It's going to die. The ancient one's going to die. And I'm like, I'm trying. I can't find this dog. And so my husband said, just give us something. Show us the building, anything. And they said, well, it's by where the water pipes are. Well, there's a water park by the SPCA. And I said to Pat, I've been there 3 times. Those puppies are not there. He said, they're insisting they're there. So I drive back over there. I go in, no puppy. I get out to the car and I went, wait a minute. I go back in and I said to the girl who I've never seen in my life, I said, do you have chocolate lab puppies? And she said, how do you know we have chocolate lab puppies? I said, where are they? And she said, well, they're only 3.5, 4 weeks old. She said, and they're really sick. She said, they're in the back room. Nobody can see them. I said, ma'am, I have to see these puppies. Yeah. And she got this glazed look on her face and she said, okay. I'm like, all right. So she lets me back there. I immediately knew which one it was. I said, I need to take this puppy home today. And she said, ma'am, you can. It's really sick. And it's got to be at least 8 weeks old before we'll release it. I said, you don't understand. This puppy's going to die. Like, I need to take this puppy home. And this woman looks at me, who never knew me. She said, I know your heart and I know you. And I'm going to call the manager and tell him that I know you. You're a personal friend and you need this puppy today. And I got the puppy that day. I spent 3 days trying to get this puppy to feel better, and it wasn't working. And the gums had gone gray and it wasn't doing well. And I told Pat, I said, I can either pull the ancient one out and lose the puppy, or try to save this puppy and lose the puppy and the ancient one. And he's like, you can't. You've got to do both. They keep saying you got to do both. So I sat there and I pumped energy into this puppy all night long. And I do healing on the Foots. And basically, I take out whatever's bad out of them and I put the good energy in and I pull out the illness or whatever. I did the same thing with this puppy, never thinking it would live, and she lived. And the ancient one I was able to release, and everybody was happy. This is the happiest dog on the planet. Like, she doesn't know how to growl. She's happy 24 hours a day. So she's in there, fat, happy, and sassy. And the Foots play with her. And I have a Great Pyrenees, and they will literally toss stuff over the fence for them to play with.
Really?
So
That's pretty cool.
I do this walk around in my yard every day when they go out, because I don't know what's going to get tossed in there. And I just walked through the whole yard. There was nothing in there. I walk in the house, I turn around, and there's a 2x4 the Pyrenees is carrying around the backyard in her mouth.
That's funny. You know, you say that. I have a couple metal racks with shelves on them, and they're leaning up against the fence in my house. And what's sitting on those racks are like 8 or 9 basketballs that my son has, because I built him a basketball. And what I'll see is I'll notice there's a basketball on the other side of the fence, or they're knocked over onto my side of the yard and they're on the basketball court. And my son doesn't really go back there at this moment anymore to do that. And every night I'm like cleaning up, like putting stuff away, because I'm like, I know something's gonna happen. So the next morning I wake up and there's like stuff just scattered throughout the basketball court or the yard. Yeah,
I used to put my garage in Michigan because they would get scared, and I would, if they were like, the kids were up by the house. So I would leave, if I knew the storms were coming in or whatever, because they would come in really quick, I'd leave the garage door open so they could get temporary shelter in there. And they would steal the footballs and the basketballs and the soccer balls. And I walked out in the woods one day and I couldn't find any of these 3 balls in the garage. And I walked out in the back of the woods and I found a bag of my grandson's clothing back there. And I found the football, and it looked like somebody had literally grabbed it and squeezed it like you would crush a tin can in their hand. And I thought, okay, well, now we got the football. We went 2 doors down and found the basketball, and it looked like they bit it like an apple. Like there was a perfect set of teeth, top and bottom, where they had literally bit it like an apple. But they took, clothes out of the garage. They took tools. Oh my God. My ex-husband would just on a rampage about how all of his tools were disappearing. And I'm like, nobody's touching them.
I've heard tools, garden tools, shovels, rakes. I've heard all those stories. And every now and then I'll see shovels thrown over the fence.
The tools were gone almost a year and a half. And by then I had gotten divorced. And all of a sudden one day they were all back on my deck and rusted beyond belief. But my kids would give them toys, and they would disappear for, a year, 2 years or whatever. And then all of a sudden they would just show back up.
Wow. That's crazy. So I think Laura had a question about let's see, it's kind of far back though. I think she wanted to know if you were I would say remote viewing.
I do. I don't, here's the thing, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I try not to be intrusive. It's not like I peek around every corner and watch everybody all the time. The only time I do it has been if I felt someone was in danger, or if it was for work that some type of paranormal being, whether it's a Bigfoot, Dogman, or the good ETs or whatever, need me to. But I don't go around and do it. I have somebody that I met that used to live in Alaska and is now a treasured friend. And when I first met him, I was like talking to the Bigfoot that was following him around all the time. And I said, well, you've got this car trailer, or this trailer, I can't remember what it was, but some trailer out in the front yard. I said, he's on the other side of that. And he said, I never told you that trailer was there. How do you know that? And I said, well, because I was, I can remote view, and I was, doing it because I was trying to see where he was at in correspondence with your house. But yeah, I can.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that, because you kind of mentioned the thing in my yard, and I never told you where I lived either. But I wasn't stirred. I was actually intrigued that you were able to mention that. And then when we just talked recently, what did you tell me about recently that we just been talking about earlier?
The
pool deck. Yes.
It was so funny because when you and I were, I think we were not videoing, but we were messaging back and forth. And the one by you kept saying, he doesn't always know it, but I go by the deck. And he showed me a picture of the deck. And I was like, I asked him, I said, well, does he know you're back there? And he said, I don't know. So I said to you, do you have a wood deck? It was definitely wood. And then tonight when you and I were talking, he said, make sure he knows I look in the windows and watch him from that deck.
Wow. And that deck is actually in my backyard. You got to hop the gate from the woods. But like I
Yeah.
said, there's no pool on the deck now. The pool's gone, but the deck
Yeah. See, I
has
didn't see the
a couple
pool. I just
stairs.
saw the wood
Yeah.
deck.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And they don't
That's
have a
got my mind like.
problem. They have no problem jumping a fence. Like I have
Oh
a
yeah,
5.5. The fence I have in the backyard for the dogs is 5.5 foot,
yeah.
and they climb. They jump that thing like it's nothing, and they'll come up and they'll stand on my deck and look in my. I have these two big, huge glass doors, and look in the living room.
Yeah, they can see in my house. I don't know if they can see inside because I have the blinds down most of the time at night, but still. And the way I can tell that my fence gets moved,
No,
I have
somebody
a
said hi.
yeah, no. So I have these rocks. They're like the white quartz rocks, and they're flat.
Uh-huh.
I'll set them up on my deck posts. I'm sorry, my fence posts where the gate opens.
Yeah.
And usually within the next day, they're usually those rocks are laying on the ground, and it takes something kind of force to get them off of the post and knock them on the ground. So I know that something's moving them. So that's how I know they're either messing around on my fence or actually opening the gate to get through my yard. So one way or another, I know they're coming.
Yeah. Well, here's what a weirdo I am. Everybody in my house is like, I want, curtains. I want boards up over the window, whatever. I don't, because when I was in Michigan, every time I covered my window or put a curtain up, they raised holy hell. I put an air conditioner in my window. I woke up the next morning, it was out in the middle of the woods. They didn't like where they couldn't see me. And it doesn't bother me to have them look in the window. They look in the window at me all the time. I'll wake up and see this face in the window. Doesn't faze me. I love it. But so I don't cover my windows, and they will go, and my house is built up off the ground because hurricanes in South Carolina. They'll sit underneath that window, and Igor's heard them talking before under that window, thinking it was me. And then they would go under there and sit under there, and the cats will get up on the windowsill, and then all of a sudden you'll see this arm come up, hairy arm come up, slap the screen and come back down, scare the crap out of the cat. But I don't ever cover up my windows. I never have. I change in the bathroom, and they hate it because in my bathroom, the window is all smoke. It's got that smoke tempered glass.
Yeah, it's got the smoke glass. Yeah.
They hate it. They can't see in it. And so I'm always finding handprints on it. And that window is 8 foot off the ground. When Igor was here the first time, I'm like, check out these handprints. And he's like, oh my goodness,
Wow. Yeah, Marquetta, check Duke's channel out. It's a great channel.
He's fantastic. He's
been around for years and years, and he has some great researchers, investigations. He does. Duke,
legit.
What's the area of giants that you go out to all the time? I can't think of the name, but he's got some really good stuff.
Well, I'll tell you something too about Duke. The Bigfoots adore him. I talked to the ones for him up in the area where Marquetta, I'm actually not from across the straits in Michigan. I was from like an hour and a half before Traverse City on the western side of the state in the Manistee National Forest. But anyway, back to Duke. He has this group that absolutely adores him. And I'll talk to them for him. And he has such a special relationship. Like, really, people need to listen to him on how he is in his interaction, because he knows what he's doing and they adore him for it. He's not forceful with them. He's not intrusive with them. He'll get hold of me and say, hey, I'm going up there, ask them what they want for snacks, and I'll tell him, and he always takes them up there. But he really listens to their thoughts and their wants and their needs. Like, he'll ask me to talk to him, and he's had different researchers up there that they don't like. And as soon as I let them know they're not comfortable with this person or this person, and they won't give me a name, they'll show me what they look like so I can describe it to Duke, and he'll say, okay, I know that person. And he's respectful of them. And see, that's the thing. If you want a relationship with these things, it's all based on respect. If you don't have the respect for them, their lives, their culture, and what they are, you don't stand a chance. And Duke does that for them, and they love him. Like, they truly adore him.
I think you show them that you're a good person to earn their respect. Like, I've been bringing out like every winter I brought out that dead straw grass. I put shells out for them. I mean, every now and then I'll throw some apples out back in the gifting area. And I think by doing that, I earned the respect because I was gifted a deer. I mean, who gets gifted a deer from the Bigfoot? Because they're when I checked, I missed it hunting. It came back. Its neck was snapped all the way back, and there was no other wounds on the body. I checked the body for any kind of impacts, broken hips, legs, antlers, hoofs, kneecap, whatever.
Yeah,
nothing was damaged except the neck was snapped, and I was like, wow, I was blown away.
The thing, Tom, is they know your heart before you know it,
mm-hmm.
really and truly, and you're a good person. That's why they love you,
mm-hmm.
and the ones around you adore you.
Wow,
they consider you their friend. But again, it's based on mutual respect.
mm-hmm.
There's no ulterior motives. They don't like games. And I can't tell you how many people will get hold of me and say, I want them to answer this question for me and answer this question. That's not how this works. Let me explain something to you. They don't like being tricked. They don't like people trying to trick them. If you think you're going to set them up and say, you're going to have to tell me this, this, and this. No. Hang on a minute. Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. So if you think that you are going to, put a question on them
mm-hmm.
to get them to answer you the way you want, it's just not going to happen. It's really not going to. Because if they think that you're doing it to trick them, they're done with you.
It's a good way to put it. Why would you want to trick them anyway? I mean, at the end of the day, they're just like us. They're people like us. You know?
You would be amazed.
I don't even want to get into that. That's just, people have different motives and intentions, and my intentions are always pure when I'm out. The nature's meant to be observed with pure heart and just, content the way it is. Once they see that you can look at it like that, I guess they can tell your intentions are pure, and they want to, let you into, however they can be.
Well, and it's like their structures.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go out into their homes and mess with their work. If you want to look at their structures, if you want to photograph their structures, and that's what you feel you want to do, that's fine. Don't mess with them. Don't touch them. Don't tear them apart. Don't knock them down to see if you'd be amazed at people that will do that to see if it'll make them mad enough to show themselves. That's not, I stress this to everybody. You want positive interaction. You don't want negative. You may get that negative interaction, but then you're done and you're dead to them. Positive interaction will get you more of the truth. Positive interaction will get you to see things that you never dreamt you could. So it's just, you don't want the negative. And the same with the dogmen. I have no problem with the dogmen. Are there some that are highly aggressive? Yes, the government created some that are trained killers.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, Bama. Don't ever knock the structures down. Yeah, you just don't. Have respect. When you leave your house, you're walking into theirs.
Absolutely. And also what Duke says, don't hug the Wookiee.
Yep, exactly.
Don't hug the Wookiee.
Oh my gosh, they would come up behind me. I don't know if anybody knows what counting coup is. Counting coup is when they go, when they're cloaked and then they touch you. Yeah, they come up behind me and they play with my hair. Or they pat my shoulder. I have had one come up in physical form and, put his hand on me and kind of like did the whole trancing thing. But he was very kind. He was not aggressive at all. But yeah, they used to do that. And then they liked it when I would sleep with my window open. And they would put their hands in. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd have mud and leaves in my hair.
Wow. Mud and leaves.
Like,
yeah, I like I said, when I see the structures in the woods, I'll take a picture or something. I don't bother with it, unless, like I said, unless there's a tree that's knocked over on my trail and I got to cut the tree down. I don't consider a tree a structure. I think the tree, they pushed them down to kind of say something like, "Hey, get that loud four-wheeler out of this woods because it's too loud."
100%. They hate them.
Yeah. And I was riding, actually, a couple months ago, I have a loud four-wheeler. It's one of those old 1988 two-stroke race quads, and it's really loud. It's one of those really revved-up zinger, race zingers that they call them. and I was riding through the woods, and I mean, I had this thing screaming, and all of a sudden I hear a whoop from my left, and I just look up, and it seemed like it was coming from a tree. But once I heard it, I mean, it was loud enough to overpower the sound of my four-wheeler. Once I heard it, I was like, I'm out of here, and I just took off out of the woods. I'm like, I'm not coming, I'm not messing around, because for something to be loud enough to overpower the sound of my bike. I mean, it had to be loud to like a whoop scream.
Oh, definitely.
So probably was sleeping, or there was a baby with it, and it didn't like that.
Yeah.
I took the sign though. I got the hell out of there. I took the signal.
That's the whole thing. Like they really will give you signs. It's like people say, well, they threw a rock at me. Okay, was it a pebble? Was it medium? Was it big? Because they all mean different. If you've got big rocks coming at you, you've now pushed, past an area you shouldn't be in. Little tiny pebbles are just to see what you're going to do and to let you know they're there.
Yeah, it's almost like a little like, hey, kind of one of those things. Like, hey, there's someone there, there's someone's kind of close. We're going to just kind of guide some little pebbles out there to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. But it's like if they're throwing big rocks at you, you've gotten too close. You don't know, are they hunting? Is there children there? If your kid's outside and a stranger comes up to them, you're going to protect them.
Absolutely.
People are constantly not expecting that from them, and they're highly maternal.
Oh yeah, they protect them babies with their lives depend on it. Absolutely. I guess I'm pretty good. I had a really good time interviewing you. Are you good? I mean, I know you're in your car. If people don't know, you're in your car because your dogs are in your house, and so you got to go in your car to do the interview. So.
My house right now. My son just got out of the military, and so him and his pregnant wife and their daughter are in there.
Oh, wow.
And animals are all having a good time. And the other thing is,
grandma.
Yeah, and the other thing is, we're talking. It's dark here, which means I have Foots, Dogmen, ETs, cat people, and Dimensionals running amok out in my yard, front and back, which sets the dogs off. There's no sense. It's not going to be quiet until. And my husband laughs at me like I do the mom voice to the Bigfoots. You will be quiet. Yeah. I'm doing this tonight. I want sleep. Yeah, I do the mom voice.
Well, it works. If it works, and that you got to do it work.
Right? And think this silly, insignificant woman. I don't think that it has anything to do with me. I think they just laugh at me and they try to humor me.
Yeah, well, it works. So
I really want her to keep healing us, so we'll just tolerate her.
Yeah, exactly. But I had a good time interviewing you tonight, and if you ever want to do this again, I'd love to have you on again in the future. Next month or two.
You tell me when we'll do it, because I had a blast.
And I also need the Duke's number because I got to get him. I'm trying to get a hold of him and get him as a guest. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to end this broadcast. Good night, everybody. Y'all have a wonderful week.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks again for coming on tonight, for joining, and for checking out my channel. And Miss Robyn, she's great.
Yeah, thank you.